Hey guys, Professor Jeff. I'm back again with another video lecture, and this time I'm going to be covering the first two readings in our Aristotle section. In the first segment of this video, I'm going to give us a nice little graphic breakdown of Aristotle's theory of the categories. That should help make that difficult reading a lot more understandable. And in the second segment of this video, I'm going to go over a couple of terms that can help us understand Aristotle's theory of politics, as well as all of the political philosophers that we're going to be looking at moving forward. All right, let's go. Aristotle writes in section 1, part 3 of the categories, when one thing is predicated of another, all that which is predicable of the predicate will be predicable also of the subject. What does this mean? Let's take a look. So to take a couple examples that Aristotle gives us himself for different genuses, we have animals and knowledge, right? These are completely distinct, and this is going to be able to help us understand what he means by predicates being predicable. All right, so let's take a look at some specifics here. Within the genus of animal, we can understand these two different species, and of course there are others outside of these, but these two basic ones, mammals and reptiles, both fit under the genus animal, but they are themselves differentiae. Right, so this is what he's talking about there. We can divide these differentiae further. If we look at mammals, we can talk about mammals with 2 feet, those with 4 feet, and understand these to be people and dogs. We can subdivide reptiles into lizards and turtles. Right, so when he's talking about predicates being predicable of their subjects, we can understand that as being this movement from the upper parts of the graph down to the lower parts. Okay, so animal is predicable of mammal. Mammal is predicable of mammals with 2 feet and mammals with 4 feet. Right? People can be understood as 2-footed mammals, which are a kind of animal, right? So animal is predicable, right? It can describe both mammals as well as reptiles, right? And under all of that, people, dogs, lizards, turtles, all of these can be understood as animals. Animal is predicable of people, dogs, lizards, and turtles. Okay? So this is just what he means, is that the higher parts of our graph here can be used to describe the lower parts. Right? That which is predicable, animal, is predicable of the predicate mammal, right? Which is also predicable of people and dogs. All right, so don't be confused by Aristotle's terminology here. He's just talking about how a larger category can be used to understand smaller categories and the relationship between them. The next part of the text that we need to understand is this part where Aristotle writes, if genera are different and coordinate, their differentiae are themselves different in kind. Let's just keep in mind that genera is the proper plural for genus. This is where it's going to be very useful to have two very different kinds of genera that we can work with here. So basically, when Aristotle says that the differentiae for different genera must be different in kind, that just means that we cannot divide the genus animal into the species, say, English and math. And we cannot divide the genus knowledge into the species mammal and reptile. Okay? Different genera will have different ways of being divided. They will have different differentiae, different species, and different subjects all the way at the bottom. Let's not forget, the reason that Aristotle's going to such great lengths to describe the relationship between the general categories, the specific categories, and the individual things that participate in those is because he's coming up with a substitute for Plato's theory of the forms. He wants to describe how these ideas work without having to give us some form of explanation that relies on ideas. He's more focused on observation. Alright, so here I'm just introducing a couple of terms that are going to help us understand and talk about some of the political philosophers that we study moving forward. So these are individualism and collectivism. Now you guys may have heard these terms before in some different contexts. Just to define them as generally as possible, individualism is the belief that the well-being of individuals is more important than society as a whole. Collectivism, being the opposite belief, is that the well-being of society as a whole is more important than individuals. So this isn't exactly addressed in books 1, 3, and 5 of the Politics, but there is a quote from book 2 that I would like to point out that proves Aristotle is definitely more of a collectivist. In book 1, section 2 of the Politics, Aristotle writes, "The individual, when isolated, is not self-sufficing, and therefore is like a part in relation to the whole. But he who is unable to live in society must be either a beast or a god. He is no part of a state. A social instinct is implanted in all men by nature." So we can see here, by Aristotle's critique of the individual living in isolation, that he favors the collectivity of a state. All right, everybody, that's it for today's lecture. So hopefully that visual diagram of Aristotle's categories can help you in constructing your own. And let's not forget the terms that we learned to help us understand Aristotle's politics, as well as some of the ideas of pretty much every political philosopher we're going to be looking at moving forward. See you next time.